Told you. Go ahead.
All right. Well, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for your interest in all the feels. We are super excited to be able to just talk to people about this. We've worked with a variety of people as we were developing it, and many people have trialed it. And so we've had lots of conversations with it, but we actually haven't presented it to anybody. And this isn't going to be a super formal presentation in any way. It's more of an opportunity for us to give you an overview of what it is, why it's designed the way that it is, and then for you to be able to see some of the materials, because we know that websites look different than actual products look, or resources look, and then to give you an opportunity to ask questions as well. So pretty informal as we go along today. But at its core, some of you were submitting questions at the beginning, and one of the questions was like, what really is this? And at its core, All the FeelZzz is, we consider it almost like an augmentative alternative communication system, a way to communicate pain, discomfort, and difference in the body.
Yeah, and not just communicate it, but identify it for yourself, understand it better for yourself, and even just think about it for yourself. Just having a different framework to think about what is going on inside your body that is different from this thing, this like social construction of pain. And some of the things that are very commonly thrown around, and for some people resonate and make total sense, but for others they don't. So it's also a way to kind of break down a language barrier that can often exist for people who process and experience the world differently. It's a way to give someone that entrance into the healthcare they need, the treatment they might need, or just the understanding that they crave. So I'm just to add on.
And I'm just realizing some of them don't know who we are, so we should just tell them that I'm Amy, and I am a developmental psychologist and occupational therapist, and I am, for all intents and purposes, neurotypical. And this is Jacqueline Feedy, who is also a developmental psychologist, and she is autistic. So just to make that really clear, so all the work that we do together is to bring in kind of the developmental perspective, and our knowledge from just all of the different interwoven systems of things, but then to make sure that it's infused and developed with the autistic perspective at the forefront. So many of you probably know that, but just so you're all clear on who's who and who's saying what at what time, I think that can be super helpful.
Indeed.
All right.
Should we go to this?
Yeah, go ahead. If you can get there.
So what does it look like? These are the feels displayed in, well, an upcoming project. There will be an All the FeelZzz mobile application. This is the Apple iOS version, and that will probably be ready first, and then an Android version will follow, just so you know. Yay, up and coming things. But we wanted a way to kind of show you what these things actually look like, what these FeelZzz cards actually look like. If you don't have the pack of cards yet, or the manual, or any of those things, we haven't seen them online. They're amazing, and we have to give a shout out. You can see this logo down in the right hand corner. That's Ra or Ray. We actually talk about all the time that we're not sure if we're pronouncing his name right. Ra Vashtar, who is an autistic artist. And when we thought of this concept of using these very concrete and often very familiar kinds of like onomatopoeia and sounds and visual ways to represent different feels, when we brought that to Ra, or Ray, I'm so sorry, you know, he really brought it to life. Yes. This is beautiful artwork. On top of being so functional, it is fun, which is so important. And his logo is down there, and we have to say, we always are like, thank you so much, Ra. It was the perfect connection. So they're beautiful. If you haven't seen them, here they are. And I guess I should go back to kind of how this started. You know, in my own experience, I don't experience pain, hunger, needing to go to the bathroom, all sorts of things. But pain is one of them. And pain is one that a lot of parents would come to us with,
Yes.
do you have anything for pain? Do you have anything for knowing when someone's in distress or discomfort? Educators would come to us. We were getting this question over and over again. And, from people supporting autistic people, from autistic people themselves, from my own experience. And we were, thinking for a long time about how we could do this, and how we could make this more accessible and more authentic, to the autistic community. And I actually have a very Gestalt, I call them snow globe memories, a very snow globe memory of like when we were really bringing this together. We were like driving on the Q Bridge in New Haven. And I had been thinking about like comic books.
I didn't know the bridge had a name. Okay.
Cartoons, and things like that really put these kinds of physical experiences in a very concrete, really accessible way, and a very universal way, that always resonated with me. It was very explicit, and I thought there was something there. And so it wasn't on the bridge that I said that, but the bridge is where we were going back and forth with like, what can these words be? What can these feels be? Like there has to be a bam and there has to be a pow because they're so classic. But what are some others that could really resonate with people? And that's where this whole system kind of began. For a little history.
And I think one of the things that we were really mindful of and you started to highlight was because you don't feel pain in a traditional sense in your body at all, but you often will talk about being able to identify something that's different for you, but capitalizing on kind of this very explicit visual system and kind of bringing those things together. That's where this concept came from. And so when you look through these graphics, you'll notice that they're all really relatable sensations, but in some way they're very specific sensations in the body, or very specific feels. And so it's not just like a general pain and how intense is that pain, it's what does it actually feel
What's
like
going on?
Yes.
Yeah.
What's the feels?
Because oftentimes I need something observable. Pain is this abstract concept, but I can feel or hear. I can hear if there is like a blub blub in my stomach, and so that's really the base of this this system. And I don't know where we want to go next. Maybe how we think about using it. So the power of these cards, and we have them in their physical form here. Oh, it's backwards. Already on a key ring. I'm not doing a good job of that. I can't do two things at once. But the power of a card is that, making it even more concrete, is that not only can I get out this blub blub card, I don't have to say anything. I don't have to try to bring about the energy to use words or be able to access them if I'm in a super amped up state. I can place this on my stomach. I can just show. I can just hand it to someone. I can just leave it out. And it's greatly increasing my ability to try to communicate something like this if I do need someone else to know about it. And even just having a card for me is a hugely important reminder and prompt that the possibility of informing someone else is actually there. That's a big one for me.
It is. Sorry.
Made her choke.
You did.
And so we wanted something that was concrete, not just in its visual sense, but concrete in the way that you could actually express it if you needed to, and to be able to put that on your body where you're experiencing it, if you can identify where, is a really powerful tool, at least in our opinion.
Well, and what we've found is that as we were trialing the system with people of all different ages, all different communicative styles and abilities over the course of the development, as well as now the people who have it in their hands, is that this graphic style, which Jacqueline ingeniously kind of brought to it, resonates really widely. So I think the youngest that we've had somebody report back to us with is a 4-year-old who is not reading, and minimally speaking, was able to kind of look at the images and just make the connections, because the flame and the heat looks like a fire. So even though they're not reading it, they're being able to make those connections. So we've had parents of 6-year-olds tell us how impactful they've been in terms of this individual being able to really communicate specifically what was happening for them, as opposed to just a general I'm in discomfort, and then up through adulthood, because you do use these and you're not the oldest of the individuals who are using them either. So it really is just this kind of universal system. And I have to say that I've taken to using them primarily to communicate to you, but they're really helpful because they're really clear in what the communicative message is that we're sending to somebody.
Yes. And so I think some of the questions we got when we put out our little survey poll sign up here thing, many of them were just like, what are these and how do you go about introducing them? How do you go about using them? And we will bring up some forms that are in the workbook and the manual that are there to help guide you through thinking about how you could introduce this to someone, or how you could start trying to use them for yourself. But one of the things we have to say up front is that from what we've heard from people using them and a wide range of profiles of the people who are using them, is that it really resonates quickly. And so the one big thing I like to point out is, if it's in the moment, if it's in this super amped up state, if it's already like whatever's going on is taken over and overwhelming, that's of course not going to be a time where someone can learn and take it in and really perhaps grasp them. So the one thing that we really try to emphasize is try to introduce them before it gets to that point. At some point, that's when it would be most effective. But the how and the exact way of going about that, that's up for interpretation. And that can be as simple as just putting the cards out. It can be, starting to watch some cartoons together and say, see how that, like every time the Batman slaps someone, you see this POW come up. It can be fun. It can be engaging in those ways. It can be you modeling for someone else, pulling them out and putting them on your body when something's going on. So there are many ways to go about introducing it and teaching it. But we found so far that not much is needed outside of being in a well-regulated state to be able to take in information and learn when you're first getting familiar to them. So now
we'll show them those things here. We'll go here and then we'll do this. So this is us being prepared. No, this is the cover of the manual. And you can see on the back, we've got several we wanted to have bits of information that were useful to people so that they could understand what was inside the manual and what was kind of inside the suite of tools. So we didn't want kind of these superlatives. This is the best thing ever. We wanted people to have very concrete information in terms of what this is. And, one of the things that just kept coming back to us over and over again with the people who were trialing it was saying they really wish their doctors or the doctor's offices would have this. This would be helpful when they got there. So that is another part of this, is we're trying to figure out how do we get it into the hands of more and more medical professionals. And we were actually meeting with somebody from the Children's Hospital in Dublin before we hopped on with you all, because they're bringing it into their emergency room and some of their mental health services and things. So there is a manual, and we're going to talk a little bit about the manual, but in general, the manual gives a background of why it was developed, those initial questions, Jacqueline's experience with pain and difficulty accessing appropriate healthcare when she needed it many times, and giving that background, and then going into how the symbols are designed, why they were designed the way they were. And then there's a section that really is written first for the autistic individual. And it would be somebody who was able to read, obviously, but to be able to walk through and just consider it for themselves. And then the next section is if you're supporting somebody who needs assistance with it, or is not able to read and do those types of things independently, how you as a partner might provide support. And so there's a whole laundry list of things to consider, ways to introduce, activities to think about, as Jacqueline was saying, watching cartoons, playing creatively, modeling, all those things are in here. There's flowcharts. She hates flowcharts. There's some worksheets in here as well. And then the feels are in here, and they are in black and white. And that's important for anybody to know who's ordering the manual, because the colored version isn't in the manual, just for printing cost reasons. The last part of the manual, and it's the last part by design because Jacqueline helped design the manual. Or design the manual, is the whole literature review and the rationale behind using this type of system and our understanding of neurodivergent people's experience of pain. And that's at the end. It is that's the dense. Oh, it's not the very end.
It's not the very
It's
end.
not the very end. But
I knew I had to correct her. So.
It's the almost end, but it's at the end because for people who don't want to read any of those words, even if they helped write them, they don't have to get through that dense academic part to get to the useful tool. We wanted the useful tool up front, and then for people who wanted to read that more academic rationale, for it to be there, but to not kind of be the center stage of it all. Would you like to show them the very end? We can bring it up on here too.
No, I just will say that in the very end of the manual, there is a glossary that has each of the feels cards, and it has an in-depth written text description of what is on that card. So if someone is presenting it to someone with more visual impairments or difficulties, they can be read aloud as well, just in case these kinds of descriptions resonate with someone for what's going on in their body.
So there's the manual. There is the booklet, the All the Feels, None of the Words booklet, which is Jacqueline's favorite title.
The cards are my favorite.
But the title, the title, None of the Words. It's not true. There's like one page of words in here, which is just a basic overview of what the system is, why it's designed, some of the points that we've talked about. And this does have 4 on a page, all of the different symbols, and they are printed in color. So this can be used almost as, a visual choice board for somebody or a reference. And then there are other tools in here that we've developed, which are, if you're going to have somebody start to help identify on their body where it is, if they're not actually placing a card on themselves, but they want to point to some place. You're squeezing. I think
those little butt cheeks are just they have to be squeezed.
Jacqueline would like you all to know that this is her favorite part of the entire tool, that she had this inspiration to put butt cheeks on the guy.
When we first got the images back, I thought there wasn't enough difference between the front and the back, and it needed to be really clear and explicit. And I just said, give it butt cheeks. And they did a great job. Right?
This is, I know don't try to read it, but this is what that glossary looks like.
I love how you're bringing things up, but we can show them on the computer.
We could do that too. Anyway, so, and we will.
Okay.
But I just want them to see like that these things are like hard copies. So then there's the sheet that has like all of them on. And this is the one that we think that when we talk to doctors and doctors' offices, that this is one that seems super accessible for people to be able to have. This is the durable sheet. You can kind of hear it. It's 15 mil vinyl. So we've discovered that if you bite it, nothing really, it stretches a little bit. You can't really
unless
destroy it.
You're my dog. My dog bit
she
through
could
it.
She did puncture it. We've put it through all sorts of tests.
There is a pad. So I'm like completely backwards here. Of these sheets as well, which is great for a doctor's office or something like that to have available.
Right. And then you've seen Jacqueline's held up the cards on the ring as a way to store them. And this is one of the other ways that we've like experimented with storing them, is just getting like collector card inserts for a notebook and putting them in
That
there.
came from the inspiration of my Pokemon card collection. So it's tried and true. All right, let's bring up some of the things so they can see them better, right, and some of the worksheets that are there and are available if you are looking to, do this in a more formal way, or you don't know where to start. Oh, yeah, I have to stop the share. And you know where these things are?
It's here.
That's not good. You're not sharing anymore.
I'm not. What do you want to do?
I just want to make it 100%. Okay. Coming back with the share. We're good.
We're good. Mm-hmm. All right. So what we've brought up is just the PDF file that the manual is printed from, and we have these wonderful bios of ourselves, which are quite humorous to read.
You're supposed to navigate this part.
I'm supposed to navigate this part. All right. So I don't want to make them dizzy while I do this. Again, you can see it from the table of context. There's a little bit of context. That's the background, why it's been designed. How do I use it? Is if you're doing it yourself, that's the nitty gritty. If I'm supporting somebody, the partners have an important role. That's chapter 3. The think it through, the worksheets is what we're going to pull up now for you all to have a look at, just so you can see them. And then all of the graphics are in there. And then you can see we've got a few other appendices. One is the evidence supporting the rationale. That's the academic piece. And then we have a little bit about our energy work in here, because there is a significant correlation between how we think about this communication of pain, discomfort, and difference, and the impact on energy and regulation as well. So we put a little bit of that in there too.
You wanted this section, right?
I wanted I was going to get to the worksheets, but we're good. Yeah, there you go. Perfect. So as Jacqueline said, there are a lot of activities and things to consider and try and play with, because we're all about learning through kind of playful interactions and things. So there's a lot of ways to think about experiencing the feels in real time with somebody. But for those individuals who do want a more kind of cognitive approach to it, we did create a few worksheets to help kind of categorize and think through, because we know that oftentimes if you've had this practice of going through things and identifying things, that they're easier to recall in the moment if you've actually thought about it previously in some way. So there's 5 worksheets. And if the worksheets don't work for the person you're supporting, there's alternative activities that we've identified too that involve card sorts and things like that. So this first one could actually be the last one in some ways. It's the first one that we talk about in the manual, and that's why it's worksheet 1, but it is kind of the culmination. So one of the cards in our, I have to get to the S's. One of the cards in the packet looks just like this. It's like a little bat signal, but we call it the ACT signal. And this is if you're supporting somebody, or you yourself have known feels in your body that equate to certain things, right? So it's something that happens on a relatively routine basis for you, or it's something when it happens, you know, you need help or assistance to. And so this worksheet helps develop this card. The back of that signal card has the same categories that you see on the right-hand side there. So when I feel this in this part of my body, is this something that I need rest for? Do I need nourishment? Do I need space, physical assistance, medical assistance, or other? This card is a really useful one to be able to kind of like hand to somebody or somebody act. Yeah, help me with this. But this form kind of brings a lot of the work together to get to the development of those cards. And when we were thinking about it, and we were talking to different autistic individuals, and we were talking about experiences, you know, the feeling of swirly in the head for somebody who is diabetic might be really related to needing nourishment at that time, but accessing language and vocabulary to ask for that can be really difficult in that moment. So having this kind of card. But then we would talk to somebody else who has postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, and their swirly in their head is just as significant, but they don't need someone to feed them. They need somebody to help them get them to a place where they can sit down and get their head down to be able to get blood flow reestablished and things. And here. So again, it's this ability to try to be able to make those connections and correlations to be able to access and help in ways that are meaningful. So that's one of the worksheets. And again, one that kind of, if you're going through this whole system in a formal way, it's something that you would kind of do as a culmination, but it's something that if you know up front
along the way,
right, it's not
build it.
Right, but it's something you know up front, you can fill it out right away. And then we have these other worksheets about being able to group feels based on experiences. So we think about, do people have associations with certain types of feels happening together, or do they have certain types of feels that are routinely felt in areas of their body, just to start to bring that awareness for people. And it's so powerful. I'll say, again, I now use these to communicate too, but it's really powerful as someone who's a partner or supporting somebody to have this knowledge, because I know immediately when you say blub, like what that means. Like there's it creates this common language that is really useful for both of us. Okay, and so again, you can see just how we have these things broken out, and obviously trying to just trigger in people's minds ideas about why these sensations might be there too, to be able to share that information if they know that as well,
or to understand if it is something that they just need to know about themselves.
Right.
For me, knowledge is power. So a feels can be really intense and really amp up my energy if it's something I've never experienced before. But as soon as I know, it's not escalating, I'm okay, I'm good, it's just going to be part of my daily feels experience. That's all I need to know.
Yep.
And things that make that explicit for me are really helpful. Whereas if I feel something else, then I might need to go seek assistance. So just making those kinds of things really explicit can be very powerful for someone.
And I think you've brought up the point a couple times now, and I think it's important for all of us, including myself, to hear like that self-understanding piece of it. Like just having it for yourself is equally, if not more important than being able to use it to access help from other people.
Yeah, I don't think you said this on this call. I think it was on the last call, but there's someone who got these and just reflected on the feeling of how like validating it was.
Oh yeah. Right.
Can you? I don't know the full. I don't get the social media posts.
Well, I know she registered, so she might be on here, but so I'm not gonna.
No, we would never do a name, but we loved knowing that.
Right. So the person who posted about it had gotten their set in the mail, and they were quite amped about it. And as they were going through it, they pulled out a range of cards to reflect their internal experience in that moment. And one of the things she reflected on was that all of the cards that she pulled weren't like positive, like this is just the best bubbly thing ever. But she said there was this really wonderful satisfaction in being able to represent actually what was happening in her body in an authentic way, in words and images that resonated for her. And I think that for us, that was so powerful to hear that. It wasn't like, oh, sunshine, puppies, rainbows, and unicorns. It was, useful, oh my gosh, which is one of our favorite phrases, useful reality.
Yes. So thank you to whoever provided that feedback, especially if you're on this call right now.
But you'll see these worksheets go through things like environments where an individual is likely to experience something. And part of this is, one, being able to develop that self-knowledge, right? So anticipating what's going to happen in an environment, yes, but also being able to potentially advocate for changes, environmental modifications or adaptations, if it is a particularly dysregulating feels that they get in a certain situation based on different things. I think we have fluorescent lights that are popped up here. So that's just an important thing. We do have a worksheet in here that just talks about helping someone really think through feels based upon time. So we know some individuals, certain times of day are more risky than others, but not just time in the sense of time of day, but time of month. If it's related to how much daylight's outside for some people.
Barometric pressure changes.
But also things that are related to more cyclical factors like hormonal cycles or, so a woman's menstrual cycle and those types of things as well. So just bringing all of those pieces.
Of a menstrual cycle.
Indeed. Bringing all of those pieces in together. There's your weather factors, your barometric pressure. And then the last worksheet is just really thinking about, are there things. And for those of you who are familiar with our work from the person in context tool and the energy tool, it's kind of, this is where some of that stuff starts to come together. Are there personal factors in an individual that impact the feels that they have? So thinking about things like health, sleep, and nutrition, sensory sensitivities, hyposensitivities, and bringing those things in as well. So we wanted to show you those worksheets because they're not anywhere else at the moment besides in the manual. And we wanted people to see kind of the systematic process that you can use. The key is like this metacognitive, this reflective, this thoughtful piece is there to be useful for people who it will be useful for. It is nothing we ever want to be forced on anybody. Jacqueline would never fill these sheets out except as maybe an exercise to make sure they worked before we disseminated them to somebody else. This is not
I always
her.
Say I only use metacognitive strategies when I'm testing out things for Autism Level Up. Like that is the time that I metacognitize.
Metacognate.
Otherwise, it is an extremely taxing executive function nightmare for me. And it would not be productive. But when it's for this meaning and this passion that I have, then I'm like, I can do it. It has to have that kind of purpose. Otherwise, it just can't be done. So yeah, and I think it's good for someone also who's supporting an autistic person if they like to have prompts and questions like this that might help them think about, ways that this can be considered and how these feels might be presented. Those worksheets can be helpful for them. If you need to show a flow chart, I can leave the room.
I'm not going to show a flow chart. There are flow charts because some of us think in those types of systems and some of us don't. But I think what's so critical is we tried to create a tool that could be introduced and developed for a wide range of individuals from a wide range of perspectives. So obviously the 4-year-old who's a non-reader, they're not going to use those sheets at all ever to support that child. But you might be an individual who does want to sit down and think about these things yourself, or you might be supporting somebody who is metacognitive, and being able to bring those things up is important. Or you might be supporting somebody who has metacognitive capabilities, but does not want to use them, and as you said, are extremely taxing and disorganizing for. So we wouldn't use them there either, but we wanted to make sure that we had this range of entry points for people. I think just on the screen now, you have a few of the other cards that are in here that are really critical to the system. And one is just this something is different card. And there's actually 2 versions of them. One is this card that you have here, and that's something that you could use to reflect on yourself, that something's feeling different in your body, or you could hand to somebody, like even if you can't identify what it is or where it is or anything else about it, just being able to give somebody this card if something's different opens up that entryway for somebody to try to figure out how to provide support. I don't know if you want to say anything else about that.
Yeah, I think it's a great card to have available because I think one of the barriers with pain is like, I can't connect to it. It doesn't make sense to me. I know there's something, but I can't align it with this pain thing. So there's nothing more for me to do. And so if you're in a state where you see all these feels cards and none of them are aligning for you, there's still this card that is just something is different. So it's like a very concrete, explicit reminder for me that I can still just point out that something is different. I don't have to have the full answer. And that's really important for me to keep in mind. And so I love that card, because we don't want to deter someone. And the whole point of the system is to, break down language barriers. You don't want to deter someone from being able to communicate that something is going on, just because like the perfect card doesn't exist. And I think that's definitely something that is very real for me. So something is different is a great one. And then we also have, as you said, Amy, there were 2 cards. There is an X marks the spot card. And that is,
there it's right there.
Scrolling is tough. This is for, maybe you don't know what the actual sensation is, but you're pretty sure of the location. I mean, it can be used in any way you want, but just to know the location can be really powerful too. And so we did this X marks the spot, wonderful little treasure map visual there, that you can just place on the body to say, I don't know what it is, but it's here. I don't know what's going on, but it's here. So just trying to give more options of ways that someone can indicate to themselves or to something else that something is going on in their body.
Yeah. And so these cards that you're seeing now are kind of in addition to the feels cards, they're almost structural cards that help use this application or a way. Like if you were supporting somebody and you noticed that something appeared to be different, that maybe they were holding their body in a different way, or their vocalizations had changed, or any number of things, you could show that something is different card to them. And then there's this basic needs card. And this actually came with specific feedback from one of our people, and I don't think Patty's on, but Patty would love to be shouted out if she was on. So we talked a lot in our text about making sure that the basic needs were met, things like hydration and nourishment and going to the bathroom and getting enough adequate rest, but we didn't have a specific card for it. And she said like having that reminder just in the pack as she went through the deck was going to be hugely important for her to go, have I done those things? Right? And hugely important for you too.
Yeah, so important. I didn't even think of it while we were making this. So that says a lot. Thank you, Patty.
So that is, that's here too. So as people are just kind of like shuffling through the deck or looking through like that, all the feels and other words booklet, like those things are there to remind them. Then there's the feels person with the butt cheeks. So we could talk about where those sensations are. The X marks the spot, as you said. And then also that I don't know card is a really important one. It kind of follows up on the something's different. I might not know where it is in my body. I might not know what it is, but being able to just be able to communicate that piece clearly too. So there's this I don't know option. And then this other structure, this other really important card that we introduced to you. Again, it's not going to be for everybody, but for those people who need this card or this type of support and assistance, it can be a really powerful one. So, these cards are meant to be modifiable. So if they can write the feel in there, they can cut it out, they can put it in there, whatever they need to do to be able to connect and communicate that clearly.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to say next. And we'll wrap up our spiel very shortly so that we can leave time for questions from you all. But one question that did come in was about art and kind of using this in an artistic way, extending it for artistic purposes. I'm probably saying it wrong, but it had to do with art. In the pack of cards, if you get the pack of cards, there are actually blank. There are actually blank cards, and you don't have to do any drawing on these cards, but we would encourage people to make their own cards, think about their own words. Like this is the foundation to get you started, but there are so many other symbols and visual, bursts and explosions and things that could really resonate for people. So to me, artistically, this could be taken so many different directions. And having people go through an exercise of making their own card, I think can be really like affirming and validating. I think about that in a mental health context, for what people are experiencing in that domain. I've used these cards in conjunction with music, which maybe we'll share at some point. But yeah, I think that there's huge room to use these in an artistic way and to present them to someone and then really allow them to make it their own and express it how they want, because that's the whole premise and foundation of this suite of tools is just visualizing what is felt in the body.
And so this is the other supplemental card in addition to the feels, which this would be if a partner supporting somebody, they could just have this card on them, which is something different. Let me show that to you. And then the options for yes, no, and I don't know are at the bottom to be able to make those choices as well. Whew.
That was a feels serious crash course.
Crash course in the feels. So again, I mean, it's this simple yet complex suite of tools that really seems to fill the need. One of the questions that some of you asked before we started, because we asked you to submit your questions, somebody asked, what's the response from the autistic community? It's been really amazing. And I think this idea that it's just super affirming for individuals to have this. And again, this idea that a 4-year-old non-reader can use it, but a 60-year-old adult woman is also saying that this is something that can be really useful to, or is really useful to them. I think I mentioned this already, but one of the biggest feedback that we got is, how do we get this to the doctor so that it's there when I get there? So it's not just me being responsible for bringing it with me, but that people have it so that they can access it. And that kind of goes with, there was a question about masking in relation to pain, and Jacqueline and I had a conversation about this before we hopped on the call. And I think there's masking around pain is really an interesting concept. One, because is it really masking or is it a threshold issue? So for someone like Jacqueline, her thresholds are so different. Like if she ever told me she was in pain, I would know that we were in really, really serious, dire situation straits. And that's a threshold issue.
Remember when I told you, I think I might have a little fever? I think I might have a fever. I might be sick. I'm just gonna sleep.
By the time I got to you with the thermometer and we found out you had a fever of 104.5. So when we talk about thresholds being different and things, so she's not masking that. I don't think there was ever any intentional suppression of anything like that that led her to that point. It's just how she's neurologically wired to experience those things. That doesn't mean that there aren't individuals who they certainly do not want to express discomfort in their body because they don't want to draw attention to themselves. And like, I don't know if you want to say anything about that, or I should just keep going.
No, there's definitely cases where someone feels they don't want to attract any kind of attention to themselves. They know that if they, bring someone to them or show any kind of sign of outward anything, someone will approach them. Someone will ask them what's wrong, what's going on. It will become an interaction, and they've often been taught to not, like the safest thing they can do is to not bring attention to themselves. That's a very masking-esque thing. Right. And so there are people who from a young age do this and just suppress it and suppress it and suppress it. And then over time, your body adapts and there is no feeling. The threshold is much higher because you've just done this your whole life. So certainly we hope to avoid those kinds of situations, but in many cases, there truly is, even before this happens, there can be a higher threshold. So you really have to know the person that you're working with and their circumstances. Like if you think there's someone who has gone through that path of, I need to suppress everything and not draw any kind of attention to myself because it's just easier to exist that way. then that probably has something to do with it. But if it could just be the case that the threshold is higher. So
right. And I think the other piece, just to kind of round that out, is this idea of whether it is I don't want to draw attention to myself, or just this higher threshold, having this system that
or cannot actually communicate it in any way and
At that
has
moment.
no access to things that would allow them to do it.
right. Well, and so that's the point of kind of where I was going, was this idea of having a system that's more authentic to the individual to express actually what that their sensation
Mhm.
is. Because I think somebody popped in the chat, and I haven't read it thoroughly, but this idea of a pain scale, like you have had this experience multiple times when you go into a doctor's office and you say, I don't experience pain, like, but you want to tell somebody something, and they go, so on a scale of 1 to 10, what is it? What happens to you when someone
You know
says
what?
that?
I spend like, I am so thorough filling out that medical paperwork, and I tell them like I'm autistic, I don't experience pain. I write it all out, and then I get in there and they're like, so how much pain is there? Is there pain in your chest? How much pain? What's the number? And the script has not gone as I expected it. I spent all that time telling you this, and it's obviously not registering, and now I can't even communicate because I'm so jarred by what just happened. Like, how could you ask me that? And I smile for every intense situation. So then I end up in this doctor's office with a problem. And they're
Legitimate.
asking me about pain, and I'm just like,
and so
that's it.
right. Well, and so it's not really masking, but it's also not allowing you to access care. And like the script,
Masking.
no, but it on to the outside, it looks like, oh, there's nothing going on, there's nothing wrong, she's not saying anything, she's smiling, she's fine. And so you're not masking it, but to that person it looks like, oh, you're good.
Right. So that's
and
not
it's not
masking.
No, I know, but the physical presentation to somebody else who's not respecting and honoring that difference. So to have this kind of system,
Yes.
going back to that, can be really helpful in those situations for somebody to tease that piece out.
Did you just bring up this
Maybe,
freeze? Oh, I love this concept so many times. We asked my autistic daughter to rate her pain on a scale of 1 to 10. She would just freeze and we couldn't get any information. I feels that. It's like, I've seen so many different autistic perspectives on this. Some of them are like, I don't know the right answer, frozen. This doesn't resonate with me at all, frozen. Not going with the script, frozen. So yeah, and I think, we talk to neurotypical people too, who are like, pain scales are useless. Like, what's a 5? What's an 8? What's a 10? We think this could be a great thing for a more universal design in schools and doctors' offices for kids in general, and adults.
So somebody was asking also beforehand, what do they really need to do to get started? What do you need to have out of all of this stuff to get started with the feels?
The cards. The concrete cards. I would go with the pack of cards. If you find later that you really need the manual, or you really need to do more reading, you can get that. But having the first thing you're probably going to do anyway when you get the cards is to try it for yourself, or try it with someone else. At least I'm biased because text on paper is not a friend of mine. But most people, I think, would be eager to jump into the cards rather than jump into the literature.
Well, and I think so. Just even we said we were meeting with the person from the Children's Hospital in Dublin before we got on, and the thing she kept going back to and holding in her hands was the cards. As she was talking about, how do I use this? What do I do with this particular type of scenario? If I'm using it in an emergency department versus an MRI versus a mental health, like the thing she kept putting in her hands was the cards. I mean, we did start talking about posters and things, but in general, the graphics are the magic of it all.
Absolutely. Let's, if it's a fairly small group, so if you want to unmute and ask a question, please feel free. Continue to use the chat if you want. You can do a hand raise. I'm all about those too. But yes, if any of you have any other questions or comments about the feels, please let us know. Oh, there's a raised hand somewhere. Yes, I see Pam, you can absolutely unmute and ask your question.
Thank you both so much. I'm so excited. I can't wait to get my package. I've ordered the whole thing, not just the cards. I'm very excited. I've got my office ordering one too. I just needed my own. My thing about the worksheets, I totally get Jacqueline's
Aversion.
yes. But what struck me was really good was about sharing information with others. And because many neurotypicals like those types of worksheets and they like getting information in boxes, etc. So right away I was trying to think, well, how could I use the worksheets? And I was like thinking about, the 5-point scale, and it was like how I could share information about the people I work with. So I was like, that's an added feature for using the worksheets. And then my question was, and you answered it right when it popped in my head with the blank cards, was thinking about individuals, and I'm going on the polyvagal side of things right now, looking for connection and safety and not really knowing how to put that into a card. Right? It's like looking for the basic needs, physiological, we can, but then there's that, when your neuroception is saying, I don't feel safe, either in my body, which we can use the cards for, or my heart in relationship, right? So right away, I'm thinking a heart for one of the cards, right? But I was just wondering if that's something that you guys had thought about, that's all.
Look at you, look at me.
I always have her start answering the question because I'm never sure if I actually understood the auditory thing. So you start.
So one of the things that we'll say is one of the huge super fans right now of the FeelZzz is Mona Delahook, and she does a ton with polyvagal. So, and she's looking for those connections between the two. I think, being able to draw your own cards and that safety piece. But I also think about how do you adapt maybe that act signal for somebody in that way, right? Because right on the back, it says things like space, or you can add in things like a certain type of interpersonal support that somebody's able to provide. So, but if somebody has that concretely, that they know that they can share that information in a quick format that can be responded to. And as we say in the manual, like it's so concrete, these messages that we're sending, we can't guarantee people are going to respond in a supportive way, because we can't guarantee that. But what we can guarantee is the message is going to be clearly understood by other people. There is not a person that we've put these in the hands of that people have gone like, we don't know what to do with these, or why they're formatted the way that they are.
Well, I want to thank you both. I've got so many people and colleagues in mind that are very excited about this. Yay. So it's going to be shared and shared widely. Thanks.
Well, we are hopeful that it will help lots of people. That's our goal.
There is a question from someone in the chat about an autistic AMFT with a lot of autistic clients. Can we talk about utilization in a psychotherapy setting? It's kind of underway, being tested as we speak. The person that we were on the phone with just before this is going to be bringing them into that kind of a context. And she was talking about, using them in a very interview-like way to get people,
like a mindfulness interview, sort of,
to get people to like reflect on them in a different way, and think. It was very reflective, thinking back on past experiences with like bullying and things like this. So I don't want to like extrapolate and make things up, but I will tell you that she is going to be using them over the next few weeks and months and providing us feedback on how that goes for her, and what she learns with her clients, who many of whom are autistic,
right,
and many of whom have other mental health diagnoses and some other medical diagnoses as well. So we can obviously, if you follow us on Facebook, we'll keep you posted on how that goes. And if you do the same and you have these kinds of experiences, this is new. We are just starting this out. So we would love to hear how it goes for you, because it will be so helpful for us in like who we get these out to, how we do it, if we improve it, make upgrades to it, things like that.
Expansion
Expansion packs.
packs. That's Jacqueline's whole thing. Like, how do we do the? And I think I think what is really interesting is, as we were talking, is we've had multiple mental health professionals kind of approach us about the applicability for a mental health setting. And when we designed it initially, like that wasn't even on our radar screen. But the fact is, a lot of people are seeing the connections, and especially with like the interoceptive piece. So, you know, people talking about anxiety, but having a hard time putting the anxiety word on, but feeling wobbly in their body, or feeling that like flame, that increased intensity of heat and things. And so we're excited to get the feedback from the community as they start to use them with supporting individuals in mental health settings, because we do think, based on everyone's excitement about this, there's a place for it, but we probably need to do some tailored work and maybe create an expansion pack, but we'll know that based on feedback. So please, please, please provide feedback, because we're all about access and we're all about utility and useful reality.
Someone asked how they can get the cards. I'm going to I'll put the store link in the chat in just a second. I also want to say someone has talked about many autistic people have been shamed by people who are trying to help them because they can't label their feelings with classical feelings words. I can't do either. And these can be a great tool for that. And really just getting someone to think, just like showing an autistic child that there are other ways to be able to convey these things, and you don't have to use those socially constructed, made up feelings words. I'll put the store link in the chat.
Excellent.
So you should talk, because I can't do it when
all right. Well, if anybody else has other questions, they can raise their hand and unmute themselves, or they can pop them in the chat. Jacqueline's typing. I'm just trying to. Are you good?
I don't know. There are other questions, but I'm not letting her scroll right now because I'm typing.
She's typing. Somebody was asking about, in the questions that came through before, about just implementing in school-based practice and in a classroom. And I think, again, you know, the manual's got tons of activities and ideas in there. We are all about two-way streets. So if you're using them to communicate to your students really authentic, true experiences that you're having, that's a really powerful teaching tool, in addition to having them available for their communication to you. And so we think about naturalistic teaching opportunities all the time. And that resonates much more for her than in some kind of reflective worksheet sort of practice would do. It's more about learning in the moment, sort of kind of thing.
I typed an answer, so I have no idea what you said.
Just say yes. I did. Someone said expansion packs.
I did see someone in the chat too say that they're trying to wean their school off zones of regulation, which is like a huge thing for me. I can't even discuss. I could start for another hour or more if I get
which
into
is saying something. So yeah,
which is
she's all ampy.
Yeah, they.
Okay,
I have so many things.
Stop. But so what we will tell you is we're really hopeful that this summer we will finish manualizing our energy work that many of you know of and are familiar with, and just getting it in a really accessible format and doing the integration with this FeelZzz and all the different pieces, bringing it all together for people. So there will be a published alternative that you can take back and talk about kind of neuroinclusivity and embracing the neurodivergent style. So that is my, or our, it's not mine, it's mine to spearhead, but it's our project for the summer to get it done, because it just needs to be done, and it needed to be done months ago. So it's gonna be done now. Cool.
All
right. It's time to let them go.
Yeah. Any other questions? Feel free to unmute yourself and ask. Feel free to leave.
Yes.
Dismissed as you want to go. And this recording we will make available.
Yeah, we're going to figure that out
for people. So if you need to watch it back again or share it with others, it will be there.
Exactly. Thanks for coming.
De nada. I'll just wait in case.
Yes. Occasionally that happens.
You're welcome.
You're so welcome. With all of her packets of cards. I like the ring.
The ring is a good stim tool as well.
Do you want
And
that set?
No.
You can have it.
No.
Okay. I think it's probably safe now.
Okay.
Bye.